Well, thank you, Chairman Van Drew, for your leadership, and thanks to all the witnesses for joining us today. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred, a form of racism that has mutated in ever more dangerous ways over the centuries, from religious persecution based on allegations of deicide, to medieval blood libels, to Russian pogroms, to Nazi eugenics and the Holocaust, to contemporary anti-Zionist anti-Semitism, holding all Jews everywhere accountable for the actions and policies of the Israeli government, and imputing monolithic ethnic thinking, collective guilt, and guilt by association. Anti-Semitism is a perennial threat, not only to millions of Jews all over the world, but to reason, tolerance, and prospects for human progress. Anti-Semitism has had a dark career in America. We've seen plenty of outbreaks of anti-Semitic violence and hatred. The framing and lynching of Leo Frank in 1913, which some anti-Semites are defending to this very day. The official refusal to accept ships filled with Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution. Neo-Nazis at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017, chanting, "Jews will not replace us." The mass murder of 11 Jews worshiping at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh by extremist Robert Bowers, who promoted the Great Replacement theory. The anti-Semitic arson attempt against Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and his family on the first night of Passover. The murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum here in Washington, and a firebombing attack in Boulder at a gathering calling for the return of Hamas-held Israeli hostages. Since Hamas's vicious terror attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, which killed more than 1,200 people, and the subsequent bloody war in Gaza, in which more than 57,000 Palestinians and Israelis have been killed, the number of anti-Semitic incidents around the world has exploded. This resurgent anti-Semitism is drawn bipartisan condemnation in Congress, such as in Mr. Van Drew's resolution we were all proud to support. But now is the time to act against anti-Semitism, not just denounce it. I confess little faith in this administration's willingness to actually do that. And I'm not alone. Nearly 2/3 of all Jewish voters disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing to fight anti-Semitism. It's not surprising for several reasons. The first being that Trump has populated his administration with anti-Semites and fans of neo-Nazis. He's nominated people like Ed Martin and Paul Ingrassia to top-level positions despite their documented support for and close relationships with neo-Nazis and anti-Semites. Ed Martin, Trump's once nominee for the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, has enthusiastically embraced Timothy Hale Cuccinelli, a neo-Nazi who paints a Hitler mustache on himself and tells co-workers that Hitler should have finished the job. Martin, who was Trump's acting U.S. attorney, called Hale Cuccinelli an amazing guy and a great friend. Though Martin tried to cover up and minimize their friendship, Trump was eventually forced to withdraw the nomination and named Martin instead the U.S. pardon attorney, which does not require U.S. Senate confirmation. Others in his administration have shared anti-Semitic posts on social media. Anti-Semitism Task Force head Leo Terrell shared a post by prominent neo-Nazi Patrick Casey saying that Trump, quote, can revoke someone's Jew card. And who can forget Elon Musk's shocking fascist salutes? Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson posted on X that the Great Replacement isn't a right-wing conspiracy theory, it's reality. Trump himself has a disturbing history of anti-Semitic actions. He invited over to his house for dinner at Mar-a-Lago Nick Fuentes, a vicious neo-Nazi and Holocaust denier, and self-proclaimed Hitler lover, Ye. He saw very fine people on both sides of the anti-Semitic riot in Charlottesville. He's claimed that prominent Jews in our government were bad Jews, calling Senator Schumer not Jewish anymore, and repeatedly referred to him as a Palestinian, including just this morning, and said that any Jewish person who doesn't vote for Trump should have their heads examined. So when Trump claims he's actively combating anti-Semitism, we know there's a lot more to the picture than meets the eye. He's thoroughly destroyed the infrastructure within our government to detect, prevent, and prosecute domestic extremism, hate crimes, and anti-Semitic attacks. In just a few months, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security have fired experienced domestic terrorism experts and deleted key offices which monitor and act to prevent terrorist attacks and racial hate crimes. On the day after Trump took office, The DOJ demoted senior career attorneys in the National Security Division and Criminal Division, reassigning them to the new Sanctuary Cities Task Force. Nearly all left the Department of Justice instead, draining the government of decades of counterterrorism experience. The DOJ slashed its Civil Rights Division that's charged with prosecuting hate crimes. It's illegally gutted the Community Relations Service, which has been a crucial tool for countering hate crimes by working directly with communities across the country. The FBI has cut staffing in its domestic terrorism unit and has stopped using a nationwide database to track domestic terror and hate crimes. The Department of Education cut in half the Office for Civil Rights, the agency tasked with addressing discrimination and hostile learning environments, including anti-Semitic events on campus. The Trump administration froze or canceled community safety, violence intervention, and terror prevention programs across America. It's ending a terrorism prevention program focused on lone wolf attacks like the ones we just saw in Boulder and outside of the Capitol Jewish Museum here in DC, because the programs, quote, do not align with the administration's priorities. DHS has also cut grants to programs supported by the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, or CP3. Since 2020, CP3 has helped prevent more than 1,000 violent plots in what national security experts have called pioneering work with an enormous public policy payoff. Ignoring this track record, the Trump administration gutted CP3, fired 75% of its staff, and froze tens of millions of dollars for violence prevention. He even appointed a 22-year-old with no national security experience to run what is left of CP3. It's shocking that a guy who graduated from college last year would be tasked with leading the fight against extremist political violence in America, although in fairness, he did do Model United Nations in the fall semester of his senior year. Other DHS-supported programs, including the not-for-profit Security Grant Program, which helps Jewish institutions install security cameras, train staff, and add protective barriers, has also been left without adequate funding. The decimation of counterterrorism and hate crime capabilities is reckless in today's heightened threat landscape, even as DHS demands over $500 million more for immigration enforcement and border security. It is neglecting its basic responsibilities to monitor and prevent hate crimes and domestic terrorism. This negligence has been accompanied by a spike in shocking anti-Semitic attacks across America. Beyond countenancing anti-Semitism in its own ranks and dismantling the infrastructure that opposes it, the administration has also repeatedly invoked fighting anti-Semitism as a vague and arbitrary all-purpose excuse for eroding constitutional rights and imposing authoritarian control. Seizing control of college student admissions, faculty hiring, and curricular content at colleges and universities has nothing to do with protecting Jewish students. Conducting ideological purges in the name of the Jewish community just exposes Jews to recrimination and revenge. When the government uses fighting anti-Semitism as the pretext for snatching graduate students off the streets and jailing them for exercise of their free speech rights, this ploy practically invites people to blame Jews for the erosion of civic freedom and constitutional liberty in America. When government deploys anti-Semitism as the rationale for canceling hundreds of millions of dollars of federal research grants for treating cancer, curing cystic fibrosis, and conquering other diseases, that does not make Jews safer from anti-Semitism. Rather, it makes Jews the scapegoat again, the reason why the public is losing progress in science and medical care. If the administration truly wants to fight anti-Semitism, it should begin by firing the anti-Semites it has hired. It can then restore and rebuild the anti-terror and anti-hate crime infrastructure that it has demolished. And then it can call off the sinister effort to dress authoritarianism in the language of opposing anti-Semitism. The late Jewish leader, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, said, "Anti-Semitism is about the inability of a group to make space for difference. And because we're all different, the hate that begins with Jews never ends with Jews. Anti-Semitism is the world's most reliable early warning sign of a major threat to all freedom, humanity, and the dignity of difference. It matters to all of us, which is why we must fight it together. I hope we can do that." Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.